For the first time in a long while, a Japanese cruiser is beating Harley-Davidson where it matters most. The Honda Rebel 1100 is suddenly the bike older Harley owners are asking to test ride. And once they do, the comments are almost identical. Better balance, cleaner torque, less heat, and no wrestling at low speeds. Dealers are quietly admitting they didn't expect this shift. But it's happening fast. And if you've been riding American Iron for decades, this one hits close to home. Watch this through. You'll want to hear exactly why the Rebel is winning. The moment. Everything shifted. Nobody expected a Honda to walk into Harley territory and shake the room, but that is exactly what just happened. Within a single riding season, dealerships across several states started reporting an unexpected spike in test ride requests for one model, the Honda Rebel 1100. Not the Goldwing, not the Shadow, the Rebel. A bike older riders once dismissed as an entry-level toy suddenly became the machine they lined up to try. The shift was so fast that some dealers quietly increased their allocations before corporate even updated their forecasts. Something was moving beneath the surface, and they knew it. Riders who spent decades on big American cruisers began asking the same question at the counter. Is it really better than a Harley? And that was the moment everything changed. Because the only reason a man who has ridden 200,000 highway miles asks that question is because he already suspects the answer. Word spread in quiet garage conversations and dealership coffee corners. The Rebel 1100 was lighter, quicker, cheaper, and felt strangely familiar in all the right ways. It reminded some riders of when cruisers were built for road feel instead of showroom flash. Dealers noticed the tone shift. Older riders were not chasing status. They wanted something that worked, something predictable, something that did not demand premium pricing for basic reliability. And the Rebel 1100 answered that without apology. But before you understand why this bike is outperforming long-standing expectations, you have to look back at the legacy Honda never abandoned. To see why the 1100 works so well, you have to see the foundation it was built on. The legacy Honda never forgot. Back in the 1980s, Honda created a simple idea that shaped generations of riders. A dependable cruiser that anyone could learn, trust, and grow with. The Rebel 250 was never loud, never flashy, never a status badge. But it was honest. It carried thousands of new riders through their first miles and taught mechanical responsibility without punishing mistakes. Some riders still remember taking cross-country trips on those little engines because simple machines make big memories. Even the short-lived Rebel 450 had a reputation for being tougher than its size suggested. It made real power for its day and proved that Honda could build a small cruiser with spirit. That mattered during an era when every mile was earned, not documented on social media. The formula was straightforward: keep it light, keep it predictable, and keep it running. Riders who lived through the 1980s and 1990s remember that reliability with a kind of quiet respect. The Rebel 1100 may look nothing like those early models, but the DNA is still there. The accessibility, the mechanical honesty, the feeling that the bike was designed for real riders instead of trend-chasing committees. What Honda did was take the spirit of the original Rebels and rebuild it for riders who want more power, more confidence, and more value without the fragility of boutique engineering. But the real shock was not the design lineage. It was the engine buried inside this thing. Because once riders learned what Honda used for power, everything started making sense. If you want more straight talk on the machines changing the cruiser world, make sure you like this video and subscribe, and tell us how bikes like the Rebel 1100 compare to what you ride, because real rider experience adds more truth than any spec sheet. The engine nobody expected. When the news broke that the Rebel 1100 did not use a traditional cruiser V-twin, riders raised eyebrows. A parallel twin in a segment dominated by decades of American thunder felt almost sacrilegious. But skepticism turned into surprise once riders twisted the throttle. Honda did not borrow a mild commuter engine. They pulled from the same family that powers the Africa Twin, a platform known for rugged torque, bulletproof architecture, and real-world durability. That lineage instantly set the 1100 apart. This engine delivers torque in a way older riders understand. Steady, usable, and immediate. It may not sound like a traditional American V-twin, but the thrust off the line rivals larger Harley engines, including some big displacement units many riders assumed would outclass a Honda Cruiser automatically. The surprise was not the horsepower rating. It was how effortlessly the engine moves the bike without drama, hesitation, or high revving. Some riders expected the parallel twin to feel twitchy or too modern. Instead, they found something else entirely. A power band that mimics the best qualities of a well-tuned cruiser while avoiding the heat, weight, and vibration problems that frustrate long-distance riders. The engine feels planted, predictable, confident, and that is what turned skeptics into believers almost immediately. But power alone does not win over riders with decades of experience. What mattered next was how the Rebel 1100 behaved on real roads where most bikes prove their worth or expose their flaws. And that brings us to the moment riders realized Honda built this bike for real-world riding, not showroom posing. Every rider knows it's not just the bike that matters. The right gear keeps the ride honest. Check the description when you're ready. A cruiser, built for real-world roads. The first clue came the moment seasoned riders took the Rebel 1100 onto imperfect pavement. Instead of fighting bumps, wandering in grooves, or feeling nervous at highway transitions, the bike stayed planted. The chassis absorbed the road instead of transferring every ripple into the rider's lower back. For older riders who know exactly how fatigue sneaks in over long distances, this alone was enough to keep their attention. Stability is not a luxury, it is survival. Mid-range throttle behavior sealed the deal. The Rebel 1100 responds with a clean, confident pull that mirrors the sweet spot of classic touring machines. You do not have to wind it out. You do not have to wait for the bike to wake up. It simply goes when you ask, and that is the trait experienced riders trust most. Predictability. Not computer-driven drama, not gimmicks, just honest mechanical response. Even in tighter back roads, the bike behaves like something far lighter than its displacement suggests. Riders described it as easy to place, surprisingly composed, and way more fun than I expected. This is not beginner behavior. This is a chassis tuned for people who judge bikes by the way they track through imperfect asphalt at 50 miles an hour on a cool morning. That was the moment many riders realized the Rebel 1100 was not built as a starter bike. It was built as a challenger, a quiet rival that slipped into the market without a marketing war, but earned respect the old-fashioned way, by performing where it counts. And that leads to the real question riders started asking next. Ergonomics that makes sense again. The first thing seasoned riders notice on the Rebel 1100 is the riding posture. It avoids the modern trend of slammed seats and stretched out controls that may look sleek on showroom floors, but punish the body on real pavement. Instead, the triangle between seat, pegs, and bars feels natural in a way most riders recognize immediately. The hips sit in a neutral angle, the hands fall into place without effort, and the legs rest in a position that does not demand constant tension. It is the kind of layout older touring machines once relied on, not because it was fashionable, but because it worked mile after mile. Many riders with decades under their belts describe it as a kind of vindication. They have watched manufacturers chase trends that value style over sense, and they know the cost of long days on bikes, built more for photos than for travel. The 1100's design brings the focus back to the body, offering a position that supports endurance instead of straining it. Riders who have weathered back pain, stiff knees, and cramped hips appreciate how quickly the bike settles into A. Comfort sets the foundation, but the real test begins the moment the chassis is asked to respond under pressure. A chassis that doesn't fight you. A motorcycle reveals its personality most clearly at low speeds, and the Rebel 1100 shows a calm confidence that experienced riders respect. Slow turns in parking lots or tight driveways do not feel like a negotiation. The bike leans willingly, holds its line, and gives the rider enough feedback to stay in control without falling into overcorrection. This predictability is what many riders look for when evaluating a cruiser's manners. They want a machine that works with them, not against them. Out on older highways, the frame maintains the same cooperative feel. Long, steady bends show the bike's natural balance. Riders who have spent years compensating for wandering frames or vague steering respond positively to this stability. It builds trust, and trust is the foundation of confident riding. When a machine behaves consistently through different road conditions, riders settle into a pace that feels effortless rather than forced. For riders who have experienced everything from raked-out choppers to heavy touring rigs, the 1100 offers a refreshing middle ground. It does not require wrestling, but it also does not feel detached. It communicates with the rider, allowing subtle shifts in weight and throttle to guide the bike cleanly. That kind of behavior is rare in modern cruisers, and it is one reason many riders walk away impressed. Handling matters, but what truly separates good machines from irritating ones is how the technology interacts with the rider. Technology that stays out of your way. Modern motorcycles often drown riders in menus, screens, and settings that feel more like consumer electronics than road machines. The Rebel 1100 avoids that trap by keeping the technology supportive rather than intrusive. The interface is simple. The controls are laid out where seasoned hands expect them to be, and the information displayed is clear without demanding extra attention. That restraint earns appreciation from riders who prefer a direct connection to the machine, rather than a layer of digital mediation. Nothing about the system feels like it is trying to impress. It does not overwhelm with animations or cluttered icons. Instead, it leaves space for the rider to focus on the road. Throttle response, braking feel, and overall feedback are not buried beneath complicated modes that need constant adjustment. Riders who have grown tired of navigating endless settings find relief in the straightforward approach Honda chose for this model. What stands out most is how the technology behaves in the background. It assists without drawing notice and reacts without calling attention to itself. Riders feel supported rather than managed. For those who have watched some manufacturers rely on electronics to compensate for flaws in the chassis or power delivery, the 1100's balance between mechanics and software feels intentional and refreshing. It is built to ride first, and that philosophy shows in every interaction. Technology may shape the experience, but ownership realities ultimately guide long-term decisions. The real cost of owning one. For many riders, the decision to adopt a new machine is not only about performance or comfort, but about long-term financial impact. The Rebel 1100 fits into a category where insurance rates remain reasonable, especially for riders with long histories of clean records. Insurers typically evaluate the model as a mid-size cruiser rather than a high-strung performance machine, and that classification helps keep premiums stable. Riders who have watched their costs rise over the years appreciate a bike that does not penalize them simply for wanting reliable power. Fuel efficiency also plays a quiet but meaningful role, with real-world mileage that stretches each tank farther than larger cruisers. The bike rewards steady riding without demanding sacrifices. Range estimates prove realistic rather than optimistic, allowing riders to plan longer weekends without worrying about constant refueling stops. Over years of ownership, that efficiency reduces not only fuel costs, but also the mental load associated with frequent stops on rural highways. Maintenance expenses stay manageable because the engine design avoids unusual components or exotic materials. replacement parts remain accessible, and routine service does not require specialized tools or complicated procedures. Riders who maintain their machines at home value this simplicity, especially those accustomed to bikes that demand extensive disassembly for basic tasks. The 1100 respects the tradition of straightforward upkeep, which many riders consider a mark of long-term dependability. These practical advantages matter to individual riders, but the ripple effects across the industry tell a larger story that reaches far beyond personal garages. The dealer reaction. Nobody predicted. Dealers usually recognize a shift long before riders talk about it, and that is exactly what happened when the Rebel 1100 began quietly moving through inventory sheets. The first sign was a gradual increase in allocation requests, coming from stores that normally stocked only a handful of Japanese cruisers. Managers who once ordered cautiously began asking for 2 or 3 extra units at a time, not because of hype, but because they could see genuine demand growing week after week. It surprised many of them. They had grown used to steady but modest interest in this segment, not the sustained curiosity they were suddenly facing. Another clue came from trade-in desks. Riders were bringing in machines they had held onto for years, sometimes decades, to take a serious look at the 1100. These were not impulse moves. They were decisions made by people who understood what they wanted from a motorcycle, and were finally seeing a model that seemed to meet those expectations. The reliability reputation did not hurt either. Dealers appreciate bikes that do not return with complaints or unsolved issues, and the early ownership reports suggested the 1100 would not cause headaches. All of this created a quiet sense of concern mixed with respect. Dealers understood they were witnessing a shift in rider priorities, and that shift was not temporary. The real story, however, lives with the riders themselves and how their attitudes began to change. The riders who swore they'd never switch. The most revealing reactions came from longtime cruiser owners who walked into showrooms convinced they knew exactly what they wanted. Many of these riders had spent decades riding large displacement touring bikes and had no intention of trying anything outside that lane. Yet, once the 1100 started appearing in test ride programs, curiosity took over. Riders who had dismissed the idea of a smaller displacement cruiser found themselves taking it out for a spin simply because they kept hearing the same comment from friends and dealers. You might be surprised. That surprise turned into something deeper once they rode it. The torque delivery felt familiar enough to trust, but refined in a way that caught them off guard. The bike felt lighter without feeling flimsy, quicker without feeling unstable, and more responsive than they expected at everyday speeds. For riders used to machines that required effort to maneuver, the 1100 offered a welcome change. It felt honest and predictable, traits that matter far more than sheer displacement once real miles are involved. The growing respect came not from flashy marketing, but from the engineering itself. Riders spoke about how the bike behaved, not how it looked. Even those who had sworn they would never consider a machine outside the traditional big twin world walked away, acknowledging that this motorcycle delivered something worthy of attention. When riders shift opinions, the market rarely stands still, and the pressure began building quickly. If you value clear, rider-focused insight without the noise, make sure you subscribe before you head out. Every week brings another shift in the motorcycle world, and staying informed helps you choose what truly matters on the road ahead. The market pressure building under the surface. Every industry reaches a moment when a quiet trend becomes an undeniable force, and middleweight cruisers are now approaching that point. The Rebel 1100 helped push the segment into the spotlight by proving that a bike does not need massive displacement to deliver real-world performance. Manufacturers have been watching closely as riders respond to machines that emphasize balance, comfort, and reliability over sheer size. This shift is not loud, but it is steady, and steady trends often last longer than noisy ones. Affordability is driving this shift. Riders want lasting value, manageable upkeep, and efficiency without feeling shortchanged. and the 1100 delivers that balance. It appeals even to those who once bought larger cruisers by habit. Traditional brand loyalty remains, but it is quietly weakening as riders prioritize real-world performance and usability. This softening loyalty pressures manufacturers who depend more on heritage than adaptation, pushing the market toward practicality over tradition. And this brings the conversation to the brand most riders hesitate to evaluate directly against the 1100, where this leaves Harley. For now, no discussion about the Rebel 1100's impact would be complete without addressing the position it creates for Harley. For years, Harley has focused on building large, premium cruisers with powerful engines and strong visual identity. Those machines still hold tremendous appeal, but they do not cover the full range of needs riders currently express. Many riders feel priced out of the American-made segment, not because they dislike the bikes, but because the cost of entry has climbed steadily, while their expectations for practicality have shifted. The 1100 highlights a gap Harley has not filled. Riders seeking dependable performance, manageable weight, and long-distance comfort at a fair price often find no true equivalent in Harley's lineup. It does not replace Harley's legacy, but it challenges the idea that displacement defines worth. With Japanese alternatives meeting practical needs without compromise, Harley faces a pivotal moment. How it responds could reshape the balance between tradition and practicality in the years ahead. Yet, the larger story goes beyond brands entirely, leading toward the future direction of riding itself. A turning point for Japanese cruisers. The Rebel 1100 marks a clear turning point for Japanese cruisers, especially in the American market. For decades, Japanese manufacturers excelled at precision mass production, but they often stayed in the background when it came to shaping cruiser identity. The 1100 shows how that dynamic is shifting. Honda's ability to build engines with remarkable consistency and keep manufacturing costs controlled allows them to offer a motorcycle that blends dependability with performance in a way that resonates with riders who value practical strength over marketing flash. This efficiency is not accidental. It comes from years of refining designs, machinery, and assembly methods to remove complexity while preserving reliability. Riders who appreciate straightforward engineering see this as an advantage. They know the feeling of a machine that starts every single time, handles without surprises, and does not require constant attention. Japanese cruisers have earned their place by focusing on these fundamentals, and the 1100 reinforces that reputation. It gives riders a machine that feels polished without being fragile, powerful without being excessive, and durable without being heavy. The identity of Japanese cruisers in America is evolving from niche alternatives into respected foundational options. Yet manufacturing alone cannot explain the shift, because the economic forces shaping the industry reach far beyond production lines. How the American workforce fits into the new market. The rise of the Rebel 1100 fits into a broader conversation about how motorcycles reach the showroom floor and what those paths mean for workers. Domestic production costs have climbed for years, driven by material prices, labor expenses, and supply chain fluctuations. Riders who have spent time in factories or logistics understand these realities better than most. They know what it takes to build machines at scale and how each component, process, and shipment adds to the final cost. When import models reach stores at lower prices without sacrificing quality, the difference reflects those economic pressures more than it reflects any lack of effort from American builders. As demand for practical mid-weight cruisers grows, American builders face tough choices. Producing such bikes domestically means balancing wages, tooling, and sourcing in a market driven by efficiency. Older riders understand this tension and respect the craft behind American machines. The future of domestic production depends on whether manufacturers streamline intelligently without losing their identity. But industry choices only matter because rider choices have already begun to change. What seasoned riders are quietly choosing now? The behavior of seasoned riders offers one of the clearest indicators of where the market is heading. For decades, many riders gravitated toward large, feature-heavy cruisers as symbols of long-distance capability and road presence. Today, those same riders are reconsidering what matters most. Predictability, comfort, and manageable power have grown in importance as riders look for machines that support their bodies and riding style rather than challenge them. Long miles teach lessons that marketing campaigns cannot override. Complexity has become a burden, not a benefit. Bikes overloaded with electronics and trim impress briefly, but exhaust riders over time. Those who wrench value simplicity with real performance, and the Rebel 1100 delivers it. The shift is subtle, yet steady, reflected in trade-ins and quiet shop talk. Straightforward engineering builds trust, and that trust is redefining what seasoned riders now choose. With these shifts underway, the larger question is what they mean for the future of the culture itself. The road ahead, and what this change really means. The emergence of practical, reliable, middleweight cruisers signals a broader transformation across the entire riding community. For years, the cultural image of motorcycling leaned heavily on big engines, long frames, and dramatic styling. Those bikes still matter and always will, but the center of gravity is shifting toward models that match the realities of modern riding. Riders want machines that handle well, last long, and deliver consistent performance without overwhelming cost or complexity. The Rebel 1100 represents this shift, but it is only one example of a wider trend that will continue to evolve. Long-distance riding culture is also adjusting. A growing number of riders prioritize endurance, comfort, and practicality over sheer displacement. This does not diminish the achievements of riders who spent decades crossing states on larger machines. Instead, it reflects a new understanding that long trips depend more on balance and reliability than on engine size alone. Riders who embrace this perspective find themselves open to different kinds of bikes, different riding styles, and different expectations. Motorcycling in America is shifting from brand loyalty to functional value. Riders now choose machines that fit their bodies, budgets, and daily realities. It is a quiet cultural reset driven by experience, not tradition or marketing. The truth is simple. Riders are picking what genuinely serves them as the next chapter begins. Now it's your turn. Has a smaller bike ever surprised you, or do you still trust the big twins for long miles? Let me know down in the comments. If this video gave you something to think about, hit that like button, subscribe, and follow along for more rider-level breakdowns.